Hello, welcome back to another episode on Let's Talk Football Careers with myself, Barry, and today's special guest, Dave McPherson. Thanks for joining us, Dave. How you doing?
Not too bad. Not really enjoying this weather at the moment, but
it's awful, isn't it? But it's no good. You could have done with that big perm that you had back in your
career. Where I live at the moment, need a bit of warmth.
When did you lose that then? When did you get rid of the perm? Because that was how I remembered you.
Well, you obviously start losing the hair once you hit 40. So
I'm starting to feel like God myself, but I'm going to just run through your career, David. You've got an illustrious career here. So you're my first double Hall of Famer on the show. Hall of Famer with Hearts and Rangers as well. So we'll come through that. You've gathered 27 Scotland caps, over 650 league appearances, domestic trophies, a 20-year playing career. So if you could just start for the start, Dave, really how your youth career up to when you joined Rangers, please.
Yeah, well, obviously back in the late 70s, it was a lot of school football, club football that was played. There wasn't so much as academies going about. So you basically played for your school and your youth club, local youth club. And I went to school, Crookston Castle in Pollock, which, if you know, Pollock's the south side of Glasgow, not far from Ibrox, actually. In my off days, I was always away supporting Rangers with my dad and my brothers. We're a keen Rangers family. So basically youth football was playing for your school in the morning, playing for Pollock United in the afternoon, which was great. You know, I loved playing football, loved growing up in Pollock, with a great time, and also played alongside Tommy Sheridan, who's the other side of the fence. But we were great friends growing up and great teammates throughout our youth career.
Brilliant. And I believe there was a connection with one of my previous guests, Billy Davies, as well.
Me and Billy were best of friends. We both went to Crookston Castle. He joined Rangers before me. He was a sort of superstar growing up. Man United were wanting him. All the top clubs in England wanted him, and all the top clubs in Scotland. But he was a Rangers fan as well. And his dad was a Rangers fan, so he picked Rangers, which I was delighted with at the end up, because the scout kept coming to watch him play, and then ended up watching me play, and then invited me along to Rangers to do the sort of youth training on a Tuesday night.
Brilliant. And how did you? So you went into Ibrox. Who did you meet as you first went into Ibrox? And
back then it was like Stan Anderson. He's one of the old coaches way back. Great guy, really Rangers diehard. He would be there on a sort of Tuesday night taking the youth players. And then on occasion I met John Gregg, and then eventually he was the one that signed me on my pro contract.
It must be mad, just walking in and meeting all your idols like that and trying to sort of say, yeah, I'm here for myself, but at the same time, I'm like, God, I was watching you a few years ago.
Yeah, well, you didn't really see a lot of the players, because we trained on a Tuesday night, and it was in the old tunnel where the horses used to like do their walking before any big matches were on. So we're in there and maybe did a little bit of gym work, but that was it. So you didn't really come across anybody. The odd occasion it would be the manager you'd meet, maybe another one of the coaches, like Joe Mason.
Yep, and I've got down here David Provan as well. Was he a coach at the time as well? Or?
David, he came in later on, probably a year, 2 years after that, and he was great. David was fantastic with the young kids. Always brought you back in the afternoon and made you work harder on different aspects of your game.
Brilliant. And at 17-year-olds, you made your debut. I've got written down here in a League Cup win at Ibrox versus Brechin, September 1981. Can you take yourself back to there? Can you remember how well that felt?
I wish I was going back to that time now and playing. I don't remember a lot about it. I mean, I remember, obviously, it's your first game. I managed to get training with the first team players really sooner than I thought I was ever going to do. And then all of a sudden, John Gregg says, I'm playing you tonight, because he must have thought it was a bit of an easier game. And I was thrown in at the deep end a little bit. I didn't really know what to expect. But back then, I mean, you've got a lot of Scottish Hall of Fame players that are playing there for the club, my heroes. So they were great. They were fantastic, helping me along in the night. So it was actually easier than I thought it would have been.
To break through as opposed to now. I think that's now the youth setup. It's something that I spoke in depth about in my previous interview as well. And the youth setup in Scotland, it's something that really needs addressed.
I'm fed up talking about it, Barry, and it's a waste of time. You know, the academies are a waste of time to me. The way they're bringing that many players, it's a money-making scheme for clubs. Unfortunately, I think it's a detrimental effect on Scottish football on the whole, not just Rangers.
No, it's impossible to bring through so many youth players, and you notice that they're all moving abroad now. They're all going through the ranks at Italy and everything like that. They're coming through.
Well, we must still be producing good players if Italian teams are picking our players up. So, I've no doubt that we've got a talent base there. I just think how the game is run in Scotland with the SFA and the different league structures, it's almost Dickensian, and it's something that needs to change.
Yeah, we had going back again, we had somebody else that was speaking to on the show, and they were actually the chief executive at the SFA, and they still couldn't make decisions without running the decisions by other people. It's
well, that's the problem. I think it's people looking after their own corner and not thinking about the bigger picture, the game in general. And I think that's why we're going backwards as a nation. I mean, I know we might talk about it later, but if you think back to Rangers' inaugural year in the Champions League, way back in 1982-83, where we were then to where we are now, that's a telltale sign, and the Scottish national team as well.
It's having an effect all across the board, and there's never. I mean, the worst thing we could have done was got rid of the reserve league, I think, and then we've got this B league where the players are just getting battered about by amateur players, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a one answer suits all, but I think the more you get ex-players involved in these decision-making points, then I think it would help the game. I think the ones that have been brought through the system know the good points and the bad points, and get some feedback from them, and I'm sure that they would help.
Yeah, I think we're just a bit stuck in a rut there, but moving on to your seasons that you were at Rangers, your second season, because your first season you only made a few games. I think you scored a penalty against Albion Rovers as well in the Scottish Cup. That was your 32 appearances at 17.
Yeah, that was a sort of missed hit penalty. I remember that one, but it still went in.
Take it away, as long as they go in, you claim it out. And then the following season, I think this was the transition between John Greig and Jock Wallace.
Yeah.
Season. And I mean, Jock fancied you a lot. He was good with you.
Yeah, that's a difficult time for me personally, I felt, because I mean, John Greig was my hero growing up and signed me, gave him my first team break. Then, the harsh reality of football is, if you're not winning and you're not winning games, you're not winning cups, especially at Rangers, not winning trophies, then, the manager's job's in the line. And for John Greig to get sacked, I mean, I took it really bad at the time. But then you realise you have to move on. And then Jock Wallace came in, who was another hero of mine. So I was quite fortunate.
Two very different managers, though, styles and,
Yeah. John Greig was trying to be a little bit more modern thinking in how he played. Then Jock was the old school. He came in, with a battering ram, and both styles worked at the time.
Yep. And did you endure Gullen then? Was that during your time as well? Did you?
I did Gullen when I was 16. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Everybody that talks about it, there's nobody smiles before the comment. They always.
Oh no, I've done Gullen up many times now, and it certainly it didn't get any easier the more times you do it.
But I believe it was a psychological aspect to that as well. I mean, you were always able to hear, nobody's fitter than us. They couldn't do Gullen and things like that. And
well, absolutely. That's what I mean. Sport in general, that's what it's all about. If you're psychologically getting an advantage over your opponent, if that means you're more skillful or fitter, then you've got an advantage right away.
Yeah, and in that season though, you became the first ever Rangers player to score 4 goals in a European game. You're smiling about that, eh? Can remember that better, eh?
I do remember that, and believe it or not, I'll just show you right now because it's in the office here. I've got the programme.
Oh, look at that. That's madness, eh? What a great thing to keep, though, eh? What a great thing to keep, eh? And did you get that yourself, or was that presented to you? Or?
No, somebody gave me it. Somebody sent it to me. It was a Rangers fan sent it to me.
Amazing.
So thanks very much to that, because it's a one-off, I think it's a world record for a centre-back to score 4 goals in Europe.
You were played further for it a lot, though, eh? Under Wallace, I believe.
Well, even John Greig played me like an attacking midfielder. At that time, I was more of a modern-day centre-back. I was really good with the ball at my feet. I was skillful, good at breaking forward. So they utilised me in midfield as more of an attacking midfielder, which I enjoyed because you learn the game. The game's a lot quicker in midfield. And then when you move back, it's not like it's easier, but you've got a bit more time to think about things.
Yep, and then you'll be able to see things, like you say, for a different aspect because you've been the attacking player and the defending player as well. Eh?
If you're at the back, you can see everything in front of you. In
Mhm.
midfield, up front, you're sort of back to play as well at times.
Yeah, and I mean, going forward the next season, I mean, you won the League Cup. That was 84, 85 season. Was that your first trophy then, eh?
Yeah.
The League Cup, and that was 84, 85 season. And then it started changing there. I mean, you were starting to look at the season where Souness came in, and then he was bringing in these new influx of players and everything. And although we won the league that year, you left that following season. That was your time was.
Yeah, that was a disappointment. Obviously, Graham brought in obviously Chris Woods, Terry Butcher, Graham Roberts, Colin West. You know, and it was great to be part of that. You know, new era for Rangers. They're spending a bit of money. Big name players coming in, England captain coming in, so there were really good buzz about the club. And I played about just about every league match that season, and I scored about, I'm sure it was 7 or 8 goals, and quite a few vital goals for the league to win the league as well. So
you were scoring a goal every sort of dozen games through your career, 10 to a dozen games.
Yeah, I think I've got my records 1 every 10 games, which is quite good for us.
It certainly is. It makes you wonder, maybe should have kept you for it, Mary, a wee bit as well. How many goals you would have got?
So that the end of the season came, and I was actually on holiday with Terry Butcher and Chris Woods with the families, and then I got a phone call from Graham saying that they've had an offer from Hearts, and he's accepted it. And I was like, you're on holiday the season, you just win the league. You know, it's like a shock. It's almost like somebody in your family, like
winding you up.
Because that's how it hit me, being a Rangers fan and been there for a number of years through a lot of problems. So it was a bit of a shock. And then I spoke to Walter about it. I spoke to Walter, assistant manager at the time, and he couldn't really say one thing or another. But I said to him, look, if I'm not wanted here, I don't want to stay. If I'm not wanted, I'm not going to play. I want to play football. I want to progress. I want myself a better player. So, you know, I'm going to move to Hearts. It's going to be Alec McDonald and Sandy Jardine, 2 Hall of Fame Rangers stars, my hero. It's not going to be a better place I can go. They're going to help me progress. I spoke to Alec and Sandy, and they sold it to me really well. And I thought, well, you know, for me, it's not a step back. It's a step to the side. And it's down to me to prove that it was a wrong decision.
Yep. And that was the attitude of players like yourself back then. People would have just sat on their contracts and waited on another, or a move to Turkey or somewhere like that. But you were
if I was on £1 million a year, I might have stayed.
Well, that might have been different. That might have been a wee bit different. It must sicken you when you see some of the money that the players are on nowadays. It's frightening.
Yeah, well, it's just, I don't think you can think of that way. As long as they're working hard for the jersey and putting it all in, that'd be my question mark. My question mark as well would be the recruitment aspect of things and the quality they're bringing in and the type of character they're bringing in. I don't think we're anywhere near it.
Miles off it. But discussing Hearts, I mean, you were Sandy Jardine, Alec McDonald. You ended up going on to play in your first. This is just in your first spell, over 189 league matches, and you became the Hearts captain. I mean, that must have really felt like, you know, I totally made the right decision. You believed in what you were about to do.
Yeah, I think it's important if you make a decision, you think about it and you follow it through, and then unless you get a lot of bad luck, it should work out. So I became captain of Hearts, and we had a really good team. Again, back to going to Gillen, Alec.
He took you back at that.
I would have said we were the fittest team in the league. Alec and Sandy was always one of the fittest players. So was Alec. So they installed that in the team. The team ethic was more about work and try and get 1 or 2 experienced and skillful players in. And quite unlucky not to win anything.
No, and I think that was what I was going to mention that as well. For everything you've done in your first spell at Hearts, we took great joy in coming back, obviously, and we'll come on to that later. But at the time, this was you really just establishing yourself properly as you made your Scotland debut 1989. That must have been amazing as well. How did you find out about that? Is it just a phone call at the house, or?
Well, I played for the under-19s Scotland in the World Cup in Mexico. And I played for the B team as well. I had a couple of B caps for Scotland, so I was always on the fringes. And then I heard that the call-up was going to come sooner rather than later, but we were coming up to the sort of World Cup finals, the qualifiers, the group stages, so I get into the right time as well.
And you played in the 1990 World Cup. I mean, for me, that was for my era, that's the best World Cup I've seen. Yeah. I'll be speaking to Peter Shilton next month, telling him the 1986 World Cup one was the best. But for me, the 1990 World Cup was fantastic. I mean, coming up against Brazil, we almost 1-0 against Brazil. I can remember that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was an unbelievable World Cup. You know, I do speak to people now, and from fans from all over, different spectrum of Scottish football and the world. And they think Italia 90 was one of the best World Cups ever. And I would agree with that. And we, typical Scotland, lost the first game against Costa Rica 1-0. Then we beat Sweden. And then we were very unlucky against Brazil. Yeah. A sort of mistake for Jim Leighton at the end, and they scored. But that's what top teams do.
And he must have been class to play alongside as well. Jim Leighton, I mean, if you're playing at the back and you've got Jim Leighton behind you, he played so many quality games for Scotland.
I would rather have had Andy Gorham.
I'm sure you would, but that was the politics. Gorham wasn't there, and I don't think how many caps did you make when you played with Rangers? Because I think you were sold short a wee bit as well.
I think Gilly got 1 cap when I was at Rangers.
Aye, absolutely mental. To think, I mean, and you played in when we come on to it, you played in what was one of Rangers' most successful seasons, and you only got 1 cap.
Well, one player that stands out is John Brown.
Aye, bomber.
You know, I'm not getting
another one. Aye. But there was others as well. I mean, I spoke to David Robertson. He was the same. He only had a handful of caps as well. Yeah. You're looking at it and you're saying, well, you've got Gorham, you've got yourself, you've got John Brown, you've got a left back there. Just win the day, and then to move to Hearts and then start getting picked for Scotland, it makes you think, what's going on there? What is going on there? But again, you went on to Euro 92 as well when you were playing Scotland. Was that in Sweden?
Perhaps in Sweden. I mean, the beauty of Sweden was, if you think about the Euros now, it's difficult not to qualify for it. There's many different stages and back doors. Back then, when we qualified, there was only 8 teams qualified for the finals. So Scotland were one of the best 8 teams in Europe, and at the end, we finished 5 out of 8. So we're the 5th best team in Europe in 1992. That's the way I look at it. That's the way we all should be looking at it. We need to get back to that level.
I think there's a different. I think now what they've managed to install in the young players as well is we're not looking back all the time. I mean, even between my age and your age, we're always looking back at the great Scotland team. You're Archie Gemmells, you listen. Now there seems to be a more sort of a camera attitude. Right, let's treat yourself like a smaller nation, but try and excel a wee bit.
Well, we are a small nation. I mean, we've always been a small nation, but there's smaller nations than us that still do better. Yeah, that's the way I've said it. And it's not looking back to say that 1992, you know, let's bring that back. But we were, facts speak for themselves. We were the 5th best team in Europe at the end of that tournament. And that's a sort of benchmark that we should look for ourselves to gaze on and try and get back to that sort of level.
And just a quick nod, when you were with Scotland, who was the Scotland manager? Sorry, who was the manager?
Andy Roxburgh.
Andy Roxburgh. Who was he to work under?
He was good. He was an old school teacher. He was very disciplined in that sense, and Craig Brown was his assistant. So they were good, very good.
That's good. And so when you left Hearts, you were then sold back to Rangers. I think Hearts were in a wee bit of financial trouble at the time, and you were then sold back to Rangers. That was for 1.3 million. Yeah.
So that was just before the Bosman. So my contract was coming up. It was just before the Euros, and there was a couple of clubs, Southampton trying to buy me, but they were wanting to pay money. Seville trying to get me, Dortmund trying to get me, but Hearts were wanting more money, so they had to wait until my contract was up. So my contract was up in like end of June, and then Rangers came in and offered 1.3, I think, in the middle of June. So Hearts accepted it. So back then, the players never really had a say. No. So it's not that I didn't want to go back to Rangers, but it was, you didn't have a choice back then.
You had the options. You had whoever Hearts accepted the bid for, that was your option. You either go there or, you're not nowhere, sort of thing. Did you ever find out later in your career other teams that had came in for you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Who else came in for you that bids hadn't been accepted and you never really knew about it until?
Well, it's not the accepted bids. What they would do is, this is a true story. I was in the Hearts, we had a little office at the front door, and back then, we're talking about the late 80s, if you spoke to a journalist, you went to the office and spoke to a journalist on the phone. Nobody had mobile phones back then. And I was in the office and there was a fax come through in the fax machine. And so I'm talking to this journalist and I'm watching a fax come through and it's from Southampton Football Club. And then I see my name attached to it. And it says, Southampton Football Club offer £1 million for the services of Dave McPherson. I'm on the phone to this journalist, I'm thinking...
Well, I tell him what's it.
But they never told me about it. No. So I knew about it, but never actually mentioned it to me. So that was a bit sneaky.
I hear a lot of it. I hear a lot of it. Certainly back for the 80s and into the 90s there was players that have met players that after dinner speaking and say, I put a bid in for you, and I can remember the game you played, and they knew nothing about it. It was different times. So you went on. I mean, we were speaking about Walter Smith earlier. I mean, Walter Smith signed you back again. So, I mean, he's been to say to you, I told you I'd get you back when he was, because everything he wanted rid of you.
Well, I knew Walter didn't want rid of me at the time. So when he came knocking at the door and he told me what Rangers were, hoping to do for in the following years, it was a no-brainer to go back, to the club you love. People say you should never go back, but, I went back and I was more successful than I ever was in the first spell.
That was around about 5 in a row seasons that you joined back again.
Five in a row.
I mean, what a team they had. I mean, you're bound to notice a difference in how Rangers has changed in that period of time, how Ibrox had changed. But just, I mean, we nodded towards Gorham, but you've got Gorham, Gough, Brown, Ferguson, McCoy, Trevor, Stephen. I mean, what a team that was you were in amongst there.
Yeah, Mikhailichenko, Haitley, typical Ali as well. It was a brilliant squad, not just a great team.
Best dressing room as well. You've probably been involved in.
It was just fun to be at, and it helps obviously when you're winning games, but great guys, brilliant guys.
And I mean, looking down here, I mean, I wrote this down, and this kind of shocked me. I was 12, 13 at this time, right? But when we played Leeds, there was 9 Scotsmen in that team that we beat them with, and there was only 2 Englishmen. There was not a single foreigner started in the first game the game at Ibrox. I mean, that was a special way because, I mean, Leeds were littered at the time. They had McAllister, Cantona. I mean, John Lukic, he helped us out a wee bit, but even then, he was a great goalkeeper in his time.
Yeah, I mean, what a team they had. Gary Speed as well, who's now dead. They're an unbelievable team. They had superstars in their team. And we managed to beat them home and away, which was incredible.
And they had us right off. I mean, way before the games even started. Was there things up in the dressing room and that? I heard there was paper reports and everything saying, this will be an easy game or whatever. And
you always get that, but it's. I mean, I don't think you can look at that. You can use some things to spur you on, but when it was labelled the Battle of Britain, I think that was enough.
Yeah, that was it. And was that for you the biggest game domestically that you've played in? During your domestic career?
I think so.
Big games, but that one, what I had.
Yeah, I think the atmosphere and I think the fact that supporters from Leeds weren't allowed at Ibrox, and supposedly Rangers fans weren't allowed down at Ellen Road. They managed to get in. I know that.
I mean, what was the dressing room like after that game? That must have been absolutely mayhem. It must have been in there.
It's crazy. I think nobody gave us a chance of getting through. No. And just to win the both matches, not even just to win just one, but to win the both matches was incredible.
It was fantastic. And I mean, you played that season as well. When we got through it, was AC Milan. There was, I mean, who else was it? Could you remind me who else was in that? There was AC Milan.
Marseille.
Story there as well with Marseille.
Unbelievable group. And again, back then it was 2 groups as well.
That's right.
Well up there with the top in Europe.
Yeah, you're mixing well. I mean, what was it like playing at the San Siro? That must have. I mean, you played there did you play there in the World Cup as well?
No, it was at San Siro. It was another one we played in. I played in the San Siro in one of my first European games against Inter Milan. That was way back, 83, I think it was.
I mean, what a stadium that is as well.
All the Italian stadiums are brilliant, and they've got great atmospheres as well.
And they're all done up well, But I mean, you went on there. You got 5 trophies at Rangers at the time. I mean, you kept the winning run going there. Yeah. And I mean, that must have been gone into 93, 94. I'm looking at here. Sorry, I lost my way a wee bit there. And then you ended up going back to Hearts again, And that, for you again, as you didn't want to leave, You're excelling in a good team, and then I mean, how did that move come about? Was this due to Alan McLaren transfer as well? But
yeah, there was a bit of politics involved in that. And Wallace Mercer wanted me back at Hearts. I think I played a lot of games. I played a lot of football over a short space of time. Between you think of the World Cup, before the World Cup. I mean, I very rarely missed a match.
No, you weren't injured much at all through your career.
It was at that 95, 96 at Rangers. I picked up a cup. I had a double hernia operation.
I've done that myself, by the way. It's no pleasant.
Oh, I know, but not when you're playing for Rangers. It's not.
No, I certainly. I just meant sitting here, but I could imagine.
I got the option to go back, and again, I think you have to make a decision. I'm not one of those guys that would sit about and take the money if I don't feel I'm earning it. So I decided to go back to Hearts. And again, people say you should never go back to the club you were once at, but I went back and it proved to be the right decision again because we managed to win the Scottish Cup.
I think you had a wee bit of unfinished business there, I mean, you felt that you'd rattled over 180 games your first time. You could put the club in a better place, and then you had to move on again, And it was the same with Rangers as well. The club was in a better place, and then you moved on again, And it just seemed to be that you were the one that took us to the teams to the level, and then it was like, right, can we just move a wee bit again?
That's what happens, And players, and I mean, it's very demanding playing at a high level, and you put your body through a lot, and mentally it's very, very challenging. A lot of fans maybe not realise that. And I was a Rangers fan since I can remember.
You have the dream.
There's no pressure on being a Rangers fan when you play for Rangers because you try and you think you have to do.
You know how it feels.
If you come from Europe, you've no idea what it's all about. You might kiss a badge and say, "I love Rangers."
See all that.
They don't know. I mean, I know that personally, but like some of the players, and they do get to love Rangers. But if you're a born and brought up Rangers fan, I think it's more difficult.
Yeah, I agree, and I also feel that that's maybe where Rangers are lacking at the moment as well. There's no many players or even people around the club now. I mean, when you were there, you had Jimmy Bell, you had Walter Smith, even the wee tea lady that passed away recently, and that. And I mean, there's so many just
Lizzie, Irene, and all that. I mean, they were the core of the club. You had a core of the club that no matter if you left as a player, they were still there. It's the same ethics. The same moral standard, what they wanted to achieve, and what it meant to be a Rangers player.
But sorry, I've distracted away again. So come on, we should really be on Hearts here, but I got distracted away. Sorry. So we were talking when you were with Hearts, you worked alongside and played alongside Paul Ritchie, a young Paul Ritchie, and Gary Locke as well.
Yeah.
What age were you then when you went back to Hearts? You must have been in the late 20s, was it, when you went back to Hearts? What were you?
I'd be
1994 we're looking at, so maybe even older,
Older, an experienced player, let's say.
That's what it was. Somebody that could put the hand in the air. But listen, every season you were playing there. I mean, barely like you said, the 95, every other season to rattle up so many games.
Yeah,
be so consistent like that. Your body's bound to feel that now, though. I mean, in the colder weather and that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 60 now, coming up for 61. So I don't like the winters. I mean, you feel it in your bones. I don't think that says me, but
no. David Robertson was the same. He was saying the exact same. Knees and hips.
Yeah, I've touched wood. I still get about. I can still go to the gym. I'm still pretty fit. So I can't complain, No,
you wouldn't change it. You definitely wouldn't change it. But you took Hearts to the 1996 Cup final. That was the first chance to get in the Cup for Hearts. Unfortunately, Rangers won that game. But then 2 years later, you went on. You played it was actually at Parkhead, wasn't it, in 1998?
Some great success at Parkhead, which is great.
I know, going back with Hearts and winning at Parkhead when you lost it to Rangers 2 years earlier, but it's mad how things work. But could you just go through that a wee bit? One of the lads that works with me as well, he's a Hearts fan. He's ages with myself, and he was telling me that there was generations of Hearts fans that had never experienced that. And winning the Cup, it must have been amazing.
I mean, it was a brilliant day, and it was thoroughly deserved from Hearts' point of view. We've been through so much, and myself been at Hearts for 10 years, but to give so much, you want something back in terms of success to give to the fans, and to win that day, mean, I felt sorry for my ex-Rangers teammates. You know, I know what it's like to lose in a cup final, and it's horrible. But you know, the main thing is I was playing for Hearts.
Yeah.
You know, you go out and do your best for Hearts, and to win in the day was unbelievable. You know, and to experience the next day to do the sort of open top bus tour that you never get to do as a Rangers player, which is unfortunate because it was a brilliant experience coming through Edinburgh. Over 200,000 fans. And I actually met one of my ex-teammates 2 weeks ago, Gilles Rousset. I was over in Portugal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and he still talks about it. In fact, he's lost his medal. I said to him, I said, how can you lose the only medal?
It's like that. It's the one thing. Yeah. But we found that in the cup final, man. They did hear a wee bit slap of hands sometimes when there was a 4-1 cup final. But didn't tell him I said that. I've no chance. I've got no chance of getting him on the show now. I said I'll wait to edit that out. But no, you went into, I mean, you're at Hearts top 20 most appearances, eh?
Yeah.
Considering how long you spent at Rangers and how many games you played at Rangers, to get that, you must be proud of that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realise that or understand that. You know, it's almost like having two parallel careers. One at one football club, one at the other, which is very, very unique. But I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my, you know, my contribution to both clubs. You know, I love both of them. You know, I'm a dying, you know, a Rangers fan. That's a given. You know, you never lose that. It's like Gary Lotter. I speak to him regularly, and he's a dying real Hearts fan. He's never going to lose that. So that's the way it is. That's football.
But it's amazing how you can, you know, just say, right, I'm going to make the choice to go to this club, and then you genuinely do fall for that club and everything that it brings and the experiences you've had in that.
I think, again, it's like doing a bit of due diligence. When I first went to Hearts, as I said, I spoke to Ali McDonald, I spoke to Sand, I spoke to Wallace Mercer. He had plans for the club. So that it wasn't a club that you were going to that was going to go backwards. They were very forward thinking. They wanted to be successful. They wanted to bring the best players in to help that.
It must be a nightmare of trying to arrange a night out or a meal out with your good lady or that, though, because you can't go to Edinburgh, you can't go to Glasgow. I mean, do you get about the places a lot? Can you, now that you've retired, do you find you can sort of go under the radar a wee bit and get a bit of peace when you're out and about?
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I live in Dunbar now. I moved to Dunbar from Edinburgh last year, and I still meet people walking the dog, and they're either Hearts fans or Rangers fans, and they come up and have a chat with their dogs. And
brilliant, eh?
Great. I mean, I love it because, you know, it's a sign of, you know, it's something nice that people can remember the good parts of your career.
No, it's fantastic. And I mean, you got a wee message for the Hearts fans then, just before we move on to your coaching and such like. They know what you feel about them, but
yeah, I just think they're such a good club, Hearts, and I think they'll turn the corner. They're bottom of the league at the moment, but there's no way they're going to get relegated. I think just need. The problem is, I think with Hearts at the moment, they've got so many players, and it's trying to get that right team playing, the right team spirit, and I think they'll get there.
I mean, I think you better watch it because I mean that's Rangers and both Hearts struggling a wee bit in this. So you might have to get the boots back on. You might be getting a phone call again. So better keep under the radar. But you went to Australia as well. I mean, that's some move back then as well. I mean, how did that all come about? And I mean, how did the family take to all that?
So I was coming towards the end of my contract at Hearts, and I was talking about a new contract again. But again, I was in my 30s, and I felt like, you know, you're playing 44 league games a season in Scotland, which I've always hated, and I don't think any player likes it. You're playing each other 4 times a year. So stack that over 10, 15, 20 years, then you've played Aberdeen 30, 40 times. It's chronic. So I thought maybe it's time to move overseas. And by that time, the Bosman ruling had come in, so I had a decision to make. And Thomas Flugel, who was a teammate at Hearts, said, I've got a club interested in you in Vienna, Austria, Vienna. They want you to go over and play. And I thought, yeah, quite fancy that. So I had a chat with them. But then Stuart Monroe phoned me from Australia in Melbourne and said, I'd love you to come over here. You've got the experience. You can pass it over to the young boys. We play through the summer. You know, it's going to help you, the age you're at. So I opted for Australia rather than Austria. They sound similar.
I think I know where I'd rather be. All due respect to Austria.
cold in Australia, play through the summer. So
That's
that's why I did it. It was more just the weather and play through the summer. And I think the Austrian football would have been a better standard overall, but being able to,
it's lifestyle as well, the age you're at and the amount of games that you've played in that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I found I played just about every game for the team I played for in Australia. So it helped the fact the weather was nice because the pace of the game was slower because it was so hot. You're playing 40 degrees. And in some game, Perth in Western Australia was like 45 at times. So you had water breaks during the match, which helped me because I was older, made it less stressful in the joints as well.
And are you back and forth to Australia? Do you got family in that down there? Or?
No, I've not got family. I've been back to Australia since I went out there 25 times. So I've got I don't have any plans to go soon. I think I've done enough over there.
But hey, what a great change of career! Not change of career, but change of surroundings and everything. It's fantastic. Yeah. And then you came back up to Morton.
I did, yeah. So I came back, and I was at that stage that I still wanted to play, but I wanted to do a bit of coaching management. Morton at that time were, I think they were in administration, and Peter Cormack was the manager, and I got asked to go along, be an assistant manager, player manager. So I went along, and we had to basically start a team from scratch. So he took over, then he lost his job, and I got asked to take the job. And when you make decisions in football, I think back then I was desperate to become a manager and show what I could do, but I was a little bit premature, I would have thought, to make that decision.
I think all the games catch up with you as well. I feel like I'm just on Dane's making nods to different guests, but I can only tell you about who I spoke to. And I was speaking to Lee Clark, and he rattled out loads of games as well. The same as yourself, over 500 league appearances and things. And I think it just gets to the stage where you're like, I can't do this anymore. You can't keep going in, do it the same over and over.
Yeah. I think it's difficult when you, I was hoping to finish off in Australia, but then I come back a little bit prematurely, and then you still want to go. So when you get to the latter stage of your career, I think it's even more important you make the right decisions. But nobody tells you that. That probably you probably get a bit more advice now on what to do. But back then, you're making decisions when you're not really ready to make them.
Aye, it's a totally different era. I mean, you just had to kind of go with yourself. You had to go with your own judgment, your own advice. Your own sort of thoughts anyway. That you never had that advice there.
Yeah.
I mean, when did you first get an agent? I mean, what year were you? The early 80s that you sort of pick up an agent?
No, it was later than that. It was probably 90s. So the agent going about then was Bill McMurdo, who
he was the main one.
Wisconsin, and he was a big Rangers fan. So he was always about Ibrox, but he was more entertainment rather than the sports side. But now it's 10 a penny.
It's changed days. So what's the plan sort of going forward then? I mean, we've wrapped up your short coaching career. What did you do after that between sort of 2002 up to the current day? I've worked in sports management.
Yeah, because I played in Australia, there was a lot of talented young boys out there looking to come over to Europe. So they were always on the phone. I made a lot of good contacts. I did a lot of coaching out there, and I went to a lot of schools and like primary schools, senior schools, and like spread the message because in Melbourne or Victoria, Aussie rules football was the big sport, and they're trying to break. Soccer was trying to break through basically. So I was sent to the schools, and this is a better game. This is a more popular game. It's a safer game to play for your sons, your daughters, blah blah. So I made a lot of good contacts. So I did a little bit of sports management and bringing Aussie boys over to Scotland.
Brilliant. And you just relaxing the new then? You got, I mean, what do you do? Hobbies?
I had my own business sending young student athletes over to America for scholarships. I did that for the last 10 years. So I'm still doing a little bit of that and doing one or two other things. Still in football, still in sport.
That's great. So going forward then, what are we looking at in the next sort of 10 years? Are you going to stay away from football, keep involved a wee bit at the side? Or
I'll always keep involved in football.
Back to Ibrox and Tynecastle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to Tynecastle on the 22nd of December, and hopefully get back to Ibrox at the turn of the year, and do a little wee bit of hospitality there.
That's great. And I mean, do you do a lot after dinner speaking in that nowadays, or is it
I
something
don't know. I would do more Q&A things, things like this is more
Aye.
my thing. I think, speaking on stage, I think you need to be really
Aye.
funny.
Aye.
I'm too dry.
Not at all. But can I just ask you, just before we round up then, right, I'm keen to pick you on the spot here a wee bit. If you struggle, let me know. But just your greatest team that you've pick players for each position. And just tell me, you said Gorham.
Yeah, Gorham would be the best goalkeeper, definitely. Full back, there'll be a lot of Rangers players in there. Obviously, right back.
You could put yourself there because you played at right back a wee bit.
I know, but I would put Sandy Jardine because I managed to play a few games with Sandy. Centre back, I put Goff and Butcher, definitely. Left back, David Robertson. I thought David was great.
Nice.
Midfield, Trevor Stephen. Who else? I put Brian Laudrup in there as a midfielder.
Yeah, you've got to squeeze. You find some way to put him in there. What was he like, by the way? Just your seasons with him, because he was outrageous.
Yeah, he's a phenomenally talented player. Naturally talented, good with both feet, good in the air, fast. He had everything, which was great. I would have Davy Cooper there on the left-hand side. Obviously, Cooper was up, equally as good as Laudrup, just a different era for me.
Yeah.
One more in midfield. Who would I have? I would have Thomas Flugel at Hearts.
Great player.
On the right-hand side. Up front, I'd have Haitley McCoist.
I mean,
I'd love to get me Robbo in there, but he's
put him on the bench and give him the last half of the game. Fine with that. Well, listen, right, I'll end it here, right? I'll thank you very much, right? I've got to do the wee bit at the end where you say if you like, subscribe, etc. It's not really my thing, but certainly if you've enjoyed that, drop a wee follow, and I'll speak to you off camera. I'll just end this in there, Davey. All right. Yeah. But thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Okay, mate. I'll just end this in there. Thank you. And